Hi, everyone. It's Sister Elizabeth. Welcome to In the Company of Charity, the best podcast of the Daughters of Charity, because it's the only podcast of the Daughters of Charity. So we are number one, and I am joined today by
your favorite other daughter of charity.
My favorite other daughter of charity. That's right, Sister Liz.
Hello. How's it going?
It's going really well. How about you?
So far, so good. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Good. Yeah, it's good. We have a really good episode today. It's a little serious.
Yes.
Very serious. Yeah.
And actually, it's a throwback to when we were in Paris for our little session with the International Sisters.
We did a lot of episodes when we were there. We became like the thing. Like all of a sudden, everyone wanted to be interviewed. So that was a really cool thing. So we have a lot of interviews. But yeah, so this time we're talking with Sister Carmel Ryan, and we're talking today about spiritual direction. And it's a really important topic, I think, because we're going to get in a little bit to spiritual direction versus therapy, seeing somebody for different kinds of reasons. And but I think, she does a really, really good job in this episode of explaining the differences and how one may lead to the other. And so we're going to let her do all of that. But, I have to say, when she was talking about her own training in spiritual direction, she talked a lot about John O'Donohue in a book called Anam Cara, which he wrote quite a while back. And it's a book on Celtic spirituality and the spirituality of accompaniment, spirituality of friendship, of being with, listening to. And it really touched me because it's a spirituality that I find very comfortable. I like it. I use a lot of different kind of Celtic prayers in my own personal prayer. And so this really prompted me to kind of pick that book up again. And I think for me, that was like listening to her was like being in spiritual direction. She really helped me to get in touch with a part of my own spiritual life that I've kind of let go. It's so easy to get caught up in all these other kinds of things and to let go of things that really give you life. And so I got back to my bookcase and I pulled out my copy of Anam Cara that's been sitting there for a while. It's one of those books I don't give away or I don't let go of. I kind of carry it around with me. So that's what I'm going to be doing as we close out the Easter season and spend a little time getting back in touch with that spirituality of friendship and of listening and of walking with another. So I was just wondering if there was something that particularly touched you when you were listening to the interview.
Well, I'm always impressed with people who are so calm and just sweet. I mean, when I was with her, it was just kind of like, you can just relax. You can see why she is a good spiritual director, because you really get that sense that you're at ease in her presence. And I guess for me, as a social worker and a therapist myself, I kind of tend to look at all things from the mental health side of things. And so, I really thought it was important that she made the distinction, because there are things about mental health, whether that's something that's transitory or for a short time, or a diagnosis that somebody has for forever and they struggle all their lives, that somehow we have to reduce the stigma of that and make people realize that it is okay if you're struggling with someone and you need to talk to someone and get some help. And I think that sort of is the distinction for me versus the helping relationship versus the accompaniment relationship. And I think, the church and the community, in my experience, has supported both of those things. I think back when I was working in campus ministry, I was going home one afternoon and came across a car accident in which somebody had died. And it really brought back for me some previous grief and trauma that I had experienced earlier on. And I thank God that the community offered that to me, suggested, not push, but, and that I at that time was very open and still am to receiving help whenever I need it. And so I think that this episode is really important because, number one, there's a lot of confusion out there, and most people don't even know what spiritual direction is. And so, the fact that there could be somebody who could walk along with you and help you figure out the movements of the Spirit in your life and where God is calling or what God's doing through your heart and through the events of your life, those things are so, so important. And to also say that there are times when you need that other kind of assistance, and that can be okay. And thankfully there are folks out there like Sister Carmel who can kind of tease those things out. And any good spiritual director would be able to say, yeah, okay, this might be something that is more pertaining to a counseling relationship than a spiritual direction relationship. And so it just got my little therapist wheels turning, of course, but just great to kind of sit down and talk through some of that with her and listen to her wisdom about it. I think this is a really helpful interview for people who are thinking about their lives and, who want to see what God is doing, because that for me is the first step of deepening that relationship, is the openness piece.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. I think it is really, really important. That's why I was saying it. This is a serious episode in the sense that I think it can bring us to a place where we can make those discernments about our relationship with God and our relationship with ourselves and with others, past, and present. How our relationships have impacted us, and how things that have happened to us in our lives, kind of inform, maybe color, maybe affect the way in which we approach things. And, I can remember, in vocation work, saying to people, probably said it to you, you only bring, you can have all the degrees in the world. You can be the smartest person in the world. But if you're not spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, and physically healthy, all the education doesn't mean too much. I mean, as healthy as you can be, it doesn't mean that you have to be perfect, but healthy is in that sense of being mature and knowing yourself really well and being able to understand your strengths and the things that you need a little bit of work with, not necessarily weaknesses, but areas in which, you need just some support and some assistance. And I think my hope is that when people listen to this particular episode, they'll do some discernment for themselves, maybe reach out in their diocese, ask around about some good spiritual direction. And, if they've hesitated about therapy, if someone's maybe suggested that they talk to someone about some issues in their life, some things that keep coming up and maybe, they struggle with, that they'd find the courage to do it and to know that, there's no shame in it. But that it can really bring you to a place of healing and of wholeness, and a place of understanding yourself that can only make you better, can only make you stronger. So
Body of
so let's
Christ
get
right
into
there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's get into the episode. Let Sister Carmel educate us a little bit about all of this. And, I just suggest to people listening, keep your heart open. I think it touched Sister Liz and I in ways we didn't anticipate. And so, keep yourselves open to what you might hear in Sister Carmel's wisdom that can help you to reach out to someone else, to find that place of healing and wholeness that we know the Lord is calling us to.
So, welcome everybody to all our listeners. Today we have a great interview with Sister Carmel Ryan. She is from the province of Ireland, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Thank you.
Um, First of all, we are in Paris right now. We're recording.
Yes.
And
In the
it's been a
Rue de
great experience so far. How have you enjoyed it?
I've really enjoyed it. 3 days have been very, very full.
We're
But
tired.
very good material given to us. So
Absolutely.
hopefully we'll be able to use it in the future.
Yes, and we're talking about Vincentian joy and working with young people, which is perfect because we are recording a podcast episode that is about spiritual direction and the difference between that and counseling, which I think a lot of young people are confused about.
Very confused about
Most people probably.
Yes, most people.
So maybe can you just tell us a little bit about you and then about your work?
I have been involved in education all my life at what you would call high school level, teaching 13 to 18-year-olds religion and history, and was a school chaplain for several years as well. And I've retired from that now, and I'm working in the area of spiritual direction, spiritual guidance, in Ireland at the National Shrine of Our Lady most of my time, and also I work with young people in the area of vocation ministry.
Which is such a gift.
Yes, and different.
It's
Very different.
and challenging, but we love it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So you do spiritual direction primarily with young people.
With young people, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Primarily.
And so when you see a young person, there may come a point when you're seeing them that you want to say, you might need help that's different than what I offer. So what is spiritual direction versus counseling?
I think a lot of the time the title spiritual direction, spiritual guidance, it confuses people. They're waiting for somebody to give them direction or tell them what to do. But on my understanding of spiritual direction, and I suppose the model I work out of, is the very old tradition that began in the monasteries way back in Celtic Ireland, which was the Anam Cara, the friend who will sit down and listen, the friend who will thrash out, who will listen to your story, reflect it back to you so that you can hear your own story in somebody else's voice and begin to recognize your story in a new way. And that story is your relationship with your God and your relationship with other people. That to me is very different to counselling, which is really somebody asking another for help with whatever it may be. And I know sometimes, and I have done it in spiritual direction, I would help somebody to come to a decision that they need help about an issue that they are currently living with, or they lived through in the past, buried it, and now it's raising up again in them for whatever reason, and they really need to, I suppose, to bring the word we often use, closure to it as an adult, because it may have happened as a child. And as a result, I would encourage people. It is difficult for many people to go to a therapeutic counsellor.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like it. They will feel people will judge them. And really, it is just another way of seeking help to be well, to be holistically well in every way.
I think in my experience, and I see this in my own self from the way I grew up, is your understanding of God is often very informed by your experience of family.
Yes.
And so, when you mix that with trauma that people have maybe been through, or a mental health diagnosis, things like that, it can really be a barrier to people's relationship with God. And so when you see that, what do you recommend to people? Do they stop and then see a counselor, then come back to you, or do you do it at the same time? How does that work?
Many times I would continue to work with the person And my boundary would be their relationship with God, and I suppose bringing them along a journey of, reflecting on their relationship with God, where it links in and out of their relationship with others, trying to heal that relationship sometimes with them. They're doing the work, I'm just doing the listening. Other times I would advise people just to stay with perhaps the counselling on its own for a while until they come to another place on that journey where I can help them again. Because the two experiences going on together, the spiritual direction and the therapeutic counselling, it would be very hard for them to where the boundaries are, and it may be less helpful. And sometimes it's more helpful for them to deal with something and then come back to the spiritual direction where they can pick up their journey with God again in a more reflective way and move on. Sometimes if you keep on the person, it might be during the sessions just ways of helping them to pray, to continue praying, to keep in touch with that side of their lives, because maybe it's the only stable part of their lives at that particular time.
Yeah.
And for me to let them go would really be more unhelpful to them. So it's very individual.
I think folks like yourself and spiritual directors, counselors, therapists are to be greatly admired for the amount of sensitivity and awareness that it takes to figure out what's going on in a person's soul. I mean, that's really intense.
It is very intense. And I think it does take preparation on the part of the spiritual director. It's certainly preparing for the interview with, or the session with the person. It is praying for that person before and after the session. And it is an intentional, intense listening, not just for the words that are being said, but for what could be meant behind those words. It is hearing the unsaid
as much as
the said. And sometimes people say more by what they don't say than by what they actually verbalise. And some people are innately good at doing that. Others of us are trained well to do it.
Yeah.
Because I would have done a 2-year training course to take on spiritual direction and to be with people in that capacity.
I think that's an important thing to note. Maybe people don't know that maybe people think that spiritual directors are just wise people that decided to start helping others, but there's really a training process that folks go through.
There is a training process, and I know that when I began, there was quite a number of us, perhaps about 20. All 20 didn't finish the course. All 20 don't practice as spiritual directors. Some would have been advised not to continue, and others would have opted out because they felt they didn't have the skills or weren't able to develop them enough to be of help to others.
Right.
And we do we did part of our course was on scripture and on our own and prayer models and that, but a lot of it would have been psychology as well, and probably overlapping a little bit with what some counsellors would train in, and then a lot of it would be practicing our skills as well. Right. Many of us doing it would come from a background of maybe we have had theology already as part of our primary degree. So this would have been postgraduate, or we would have come from a counselling background. Some do, are trained counsellors as well, therapy counsellors. Many of us would have a lot of pastoral experience behind us,
right,
which would help as well.
That experience, I mean, it's life experience.
Yeah.
You can tell when someone's not being truthful. Maybe you can tell when someone's making a huge life decision. You have seen that before, and if you choose this direction, well, let's talk about what that might look like.
Yes, and very often life experience will, teach you that if a relationship, for example, completely breaks down, bounding into another one very quickly is not very often the best thing to do. Very often that'll come up in something like spiritual direction.
With young people,
especially. With younger people, and you're asking them to slow down and take a breath and just, refine their comfort with themselves before they walk into another relationship.
And so, I mean, I'm taking from what you're saying that young people are dealing a lot with relationship issues. With
relationship issues, yes.
Big time. And the question of where is God in all of these life decisions that are potentials.
Yes. And sometimes I have dealt with chatted with people who would be perhaps interested in entering religious life, and sometimes they've gone on to do that. Other times it is entering into another relationship which they might think as safer than the relationship they have left because of whatever reason. So there would be long discussions about relationship and why that relationship, and asking them to reconsider, to take another look, make the decision for themselves rather than for somebody else.
Yeah. And so, just to get back to the idea of spiritual direction versus counseling, would there be any, I mean, you've probably seen everything from self-harm and depression to what I would think of as the more extreme disorder, mental health issues. How does that work? What does that look like for you?
If a person comes to me with a mental health disorder or on any of the spectrums, and there's medical intervention in the sense of medication of any description, and if they're faithful to taking that, doing what they're being asked to do by the medical professionals, it's not an issue in spiritual direction. It probably takes more careful listening on my part to help the person. I also need to understand the implications of that particular disorder or mental illness, and that will help me as well. But if the person is not, I suppose, cooperating with the medical professionals, it is very hard for me or any other spiritual director to help them, because essentially they're not helping themselves. I can be the last, I suppose, line for them, and try to get them to get the help that they need. Sometimes being successful, sometimes not being so successful.
Right.
But when it comes to an extreme disorder, or a manifestation of an extreme disorder, spiritual director is not able really to have a meaningful input into that person's life, because at that stage the spiritual director is not a medical it's not a medical professional, and they would not be capable of helping that person.
Because there's very specific roles, and you don't want to work outside your...
No, and even if I was a trained nurse or doctor, but if I'm there as a spiritual director, that's my boundary. And it can be very, very difficult, I'm sure, for some who have a medical background and who are involved in spiritual direction, when something really, medically presents itself. But they would refer on.
Right. So you're always able to help someone get to the right person.
Get to the right help, get to the person who can help them the best.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's where our responsibility is, because we can never take responsibility from the individual. They choose to come for spiritual direction. And if we can't help, we have to be honest and say we can't. Mm-hmm. But they also have to cooperate with us and go where they can get the best help.
Yeah.
Because we are, to go back to the old expression, we are the Aram Cora, the person who will sit and listen.
Right.
But we can't do any more than that. And we listen to what we're told. If it's not the truth, we can call them on it, but that's all we can do.
That's all. I think generally speaking, I would say there's a lot of people out there who are afraid of both. They're afraid of telling anybody about what's going on with them or what's in their heart. And I think for me, the encouragement for any of our listeners or people who know people who could benefit from spiritual direction or counseling, the point is not to be afraid.
No, there's no reason to be afraid of the practitioner. And the spiritual director is bound by confidentiality, the same as any other professional. The only time under the ethics that I work under is the only time we break that confidentiality if it's told to us that the person is going to hurt themselves or somebody else.
Right.
Other than that, there is no breaking of confidentiality. There's a caveat to that when it comes to abuse.
Sure.
Because that is a criminal offence and we have to abide by the law of wherever we are living.
We would call that mandated reporting.
That's mandated reporting, exactly. And I suppose that's the only other thing. Other than that, anything that is said is sacred within the space that is said. And the person who's coming for spiritual direction is guaranteed of that confidentiality.
Yeah.
And their name and everything about them is protected.
That's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. That helps people feel safe, that they can really say what's going on with them. So for folks who are listening, what advice would you give for someone out there who's maybe feeling lost or is end of college or not sure what they want to do with their lives, not sure where God is in all of it?
I would say to them to find somebody whom they can speak to, somebody whom they will feel comfortable with. And most colleges have pastoral care teams, chaplaincy teams that will have the names of people who are competent and capable of sitting and listening to them. They won't give them the answers, but they will help them to find the answers from within themselves. And I would strongly advise people, especially college students, please do not let it be the week before your final exams when you're looking for help. But you do it in the middle of your final year, or better still, do the year before. Mm-hmm. Because very often, I know this from being involved in education, it's in the middle of the second year of a primary degree or an undergraduate degree, people will come and say, I shouldn't be doing this at all. I was never meant to do this. I don't know why I got into this course. And then it should be addressed.
Not when they're almost going to have the degree.
A week before their final papers have to be handed in or their final exams have to be done. 2 years, 2.5, 3 years of your life, they're very precious years. And why put yourself under that much pressure and come to a crisis point when it could all be avoided by just sitting down and chatting to somebody? Whether that is the counsellor in the college or the chaplain in the college or a spiritual director that's recommended to you by the college.
Right.
And I would say the same for people in their first years of work. Very often they're so grateful for getting that first job and they suddenly realise, this is not what I thought my degree would take me to.
Right.
To start talking early about it rather than letting it get to a crisis point.
Exactly.
Relationship with God, the same. And there's loads of people out there that are willing to help.
Yeah. And we're grateful to help.
Yeah.
We want to help.
Be delighted to help.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, as someone who's sat on your side of things, and, as someone who's been entrusted at times with people's very vulnerable moments, it is a sacred thing.
It is,
and we
very
don't take
sacred.
it lightly. No. Lightly at all. So.
And it's done, for spiritual direction, it's done within a faith context.
Right.
So the person's relationship with God, with others, with themselves, I suppose going back to the great commandment, love God above all things and your neighbour as yourself. Those three things, that's how spiritual direction takes place. It's within that context, that sacred context. And people are willing to do that. It's part of service within the Christian community.
It's a leap of faith.
It is a leap of faith.
God bless them. Well, Sister Carmel, thank you so much for your wisdom, your advice, and I think this has really been informative. And we certainly appreciate you, and I really could listen to you all day, but we'll wrap up. But thanks again, and many blessings on the work that you do.
Thank you.
This has been in the Company of Charity podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.